The phrase is not as lean, not as mean, but still a Marine. So it's very appropriate. I'm very happy to be here. I'd like to introduce my new LG running mate. It's Pat McKinney. For those of you who don't know, Pat is a Charleston businessman. He's been very successful over his years. He's a staunch conservative. He helped develop Kiowa Island. He also helped take on Richard Quinn by fighting as porch chairman on that board to expose Richard Quinn's illegal contracts there. He was subsequently fired by Henry McMaster when he took over as governor, but that man has the courage and the right core values to lead our state. So extremely excited to have him on the ticket. First, I'd just like to recognize, I know we got a lot of veterans here. If you're a veteran, would you mind standing up? Wow. So thank you for all that you guys have done, and ladies. You really paved and set a high standard for us, and I just want you to know that all the earlier generations and the later generations really appreciate what you guys did. So enough about that. I'm happy to be here. I am a businessman, a conservative, and a Marine. And what I am not is a career politician, a government insider, or a lawyer. And I'm running because I love my state, and I'm very concerned with the direction of our state. And we have got to have a true conservative, someone that doesn't feast off the taxpayer, to go to Columbia and represent all of the people in this room and all of the taxpayers across our state, and that's why I'm running. So some background on me: I grew up in Greenville. I'm married to an amazing woman named Courtney. I tell people that by the second date, I knew that I had to marry her, and she felt the exact same way. It just took her about a year and a half to get there, but she did get there. So we met on a blind date shortly after my first deployment, and she had just left working for President Bush in the White House. We have two wonderful boys. Stevie is 2.5. He's running all over the place. I'm gonna have to get back in better shape to keep up with him. And then we have Drew, who is 4 months. And the story on Drew is he was born 7 minutes after we arrived at the hospital. So the running joke is Courtney has challenged me to bring that type of efficiency to state government. So I have my work cut out for me. But I grew up in Greenville. I was very entrepreneurial as a kid. My first job was actually when I raided my dad's raided his closet for his shoe shine kit. And then I started going door to door as the neighborhood shoe shine boy. And I can tell you, as an 8-year-old, you can start racking up some money charging 50 cents a pair. And then a strange thing happened. Dad taught me a brutal lesson, and he actually made me pay for the resupply. And he taught me the lesson between revenue and profit. And it was a tough lesson, and I learned that business is very difficult, and we got to value money because it's hard to create, and we got to teach that lesson to Columbia because oftentimes they forget it. So I went to Washington and Lee University, which is a small school in Virginia, and it was there that 9/11 really changed the trajectory of my life. I'd grown up in a very patriotic family. Both of my grandfathers had served in the Pacific in World War II. One was in a B-24 bomber squadron. He left my grandmother in November of '43 and did not return home until December of '45. The other one drove Marines ashore on places like Okinawa. So when they talk about the greatest generation, I was just very privileged to grow up and hearing their stories. 50 years later, when they got together, they still complained about the Navy Seabees. Do we have any Navy Seabees in here? Okay, the whole reason they didn't like the Navy Seabees was very important in wartime. The Navy Seabees were the only outfit that had ice cream, and they did not share it. So 50 years later, that's what these guys are still talking about. But when 9/11 happened, I really felt called to go into the Marine Corps and serve my country and lead Marines in combat. I got that experience. In March of 2006, I took my platoon to Ramadi, Iraq, and there for 7 months we conducted combat operations against Al-Qaeda. And it was a tough fight. We deployed very innovative counterinsurgency tactics to systematically remove Al-Qaeda from the area. We did that by partnering with a lot of the sheiks, the imams, the tribal leaders. We tried to win them over. It was a hard sales job, but ultimately we tried to convince them that we were there to protect them and get rid of Al-Qaeda. So ultimately what happened over the 7 months was we started winning them over, and they started providing a lot of human intelligence, and then we could go systematically remove Al-Qaeda, just like Marines know how to remove Al-Qaeda. So it was a tough fight over the 7 months. My platoon earned 1/3 Purple Hearts for casualties, and we lost 18 killed in the battalion. But ultimately, our way was very, very successful. We saw a decrease of enemy attacks by about 80%. And 6 months after we left, all of Anbar province was secured and turned over to the Iraqi army, only to have President Obama do the terrible thing of handing it back to ISIS a few years later. But I will tell you that fighting for my flag and leading Marines in combat was by far the greatest honor of my life, and I would not trade that 7-month time period for any other time period in my life. Went on a second deployment, didn't get to do anything, it was very boring, no combat, only my mother was happy about that. And then I came out of the Marine Corps. And I faced what a lot of veterans face when they leave the Marine Corps and other services, which is I could get the job interviews, but at the end of the job interviews I'd hear, well, John, we really appreciate your service, but we don't feel like you have the necessary real world experience or industry experience to hire you. So at that point, I just had to create a job, and I started a company called Lima One Capital. A lot of people ask, where do you get the name Lima One? I think Governor McMaster's people are telling people that I'm from Lima, Ohio. I'm not. But Lima One was my call sign in Iraq. I wanted something unique and meaningful, so I went with that call sign. I really wanted to use my second call sign, but it was Nightmare. And Marines aren't great at marketing, but I didn't think Nightmare Capital after the financial crisis was going to be right. So I went with Lima One. One of the first hires I made was to my company gunnery sergeant from Iraq. He was a 22-year retired master sergeant in the Marine Corps who had 9 deployments. And we together have really built the company. Today we manage over $1 billion. We're headquartered in Greenville. We do lending to real estate investors across the country. We're headquartered in Greenville, even though all of our financial partners want us to move to New York. I'm not moving to New York. And it's just been a great ride. We've been named the fastest growing company in the entire state, one of the top 10 best places to work for employees, and the most ethical company. So not only have we had a ton of growth, but we've done it in the right way, and I'm proud of the impact that we've had on our community. And that really brings me to why I'm here today and why I'm running. I tell people wherever I go that we live in the greatest state in the entire country. And we are blessed for so many different reasons. Just geographically, we're blessed with mountains in the upstate, beaches in the lower part of the state. Not a lot of people can say that, but I firmly believe that the heart of South Carolina are our people. And everyone in this room falls into that category. And our people are so good because they're honest, they're hardworking, they're God-fearing, and they're conservative. And overall, when you see the policies that are produced out of Columbia, mainly because of a few bad apples that can have way too much power, the policies that are produced out of Columbia are the opposite of our great state and our great people. And we have got to have a true conservative to go down there, represent the people, and someone that has actually been successful in the private sector, who has created hundreds of jobs, to go and fix the problems and fight for the taxpayers. And that's why I'm running. So we have a lot of problems that need fixing. Santee Cooper is one of them. Santee Cooper, for those of you who know, it's a state-owned power plant. We've lost $4 billion as taxpayers. That's $4 billion. I'm the only one to call for the firing of the board. To me, it's common sense if a board loses $4 billion, should be fired. Anyone agree with that? Pretty easy. I'm the only one that hasn't accepted money from the board. Governor McMaster has taken $115,000 from SCANA, Dominion, and Santee Cooper. Mrs. Templeton has taken $15,500 just from the Santee Cooper board. So we've got to be able to fire the board. We need to bring in a quality board. One of the problems that we have in all of our state agencies is that they're incompetent. And you can see that with Santee Cooper, there are only 2 people on the entire board that have any energy sector experience. So what do you expect with a power plant when you have a bunch of real estate people managing the project? So that's one huge problem. Our education problem, we're 50th in the country. A lot of liberals will lie to us. They tell us, you have a spending problem. We're not spending enough money. That's their solution for everything. But we spend over $13,000 per year per student. That is a ton of money. But when you look at the allocation of the dollars, less than half of it reaches the classroom. Less than half. If it was a charity, it'd be put out of business. But that's the state of our education system. So we got to make sure we offer more school choice. No parent should have to send their child to a failing school. We need to make sure at least 70% of the funds actually reach the classroom. We need to invest in public charter schools, and that is a way to solve a lot of our education problems. I would strongly encourage everyone also to vote in November for making the superintendent directly accountable to the governor. So that goes on the ballot, and that's going to be a great thing to restore some accountability. Last thing I'll talk about is the roads. It's abysmal. I took my kid to Chuck E. Cheese's, and we were playing a game called Whack-A-Mole. And if you've seen the game, it's this square box, and it's got holes in it, and the kid's got this huge hammer. And when a mole pops up, the kid whacks it. And as the game progresses, the moles keep popping up, and the kid's just swinging violently, rarely hitting anything. And that is exactly how DOT attacks our road projects. There is no strategic plan. It's very corrupt, and we've got to make DOT also a cabinet level agency accountable to the governor. We've got to do away with the DOT commission, which is corrupt. We need to roll the state infrastructure bank into DOT. And the most important thing, which would be common sense to every one of us in this room, is we have to come up with a 5-year strategic plan on how are we going to pave our roads, which roads are going to be expanded, which new roads are we going to have, and it needs to be based on 2 simple criteria. Number 1, road usage, and 2, growth of the area. That's just very basic common sense solutions to a very complex problem, but common sense doesn't exist with a lot of these agencies. So I know we're going to take questions in a second. I'll just end on this. Ultimately, this race comes down to leadership. And all of you in this room are going to be choosing the leader of our state for probably the next 8 years. And in my experience in leading a lot of combat missions and building a successful company, leadership comes down to a person's 3 traits. Number 1, it comes down to a person's core values. Number 2, core competencies. And 3, it's whether or not they possess courage to do the right thing. And I will tell you my core values and Pat McKinney's core values. We are true conservatives. We have always voted for Republicans. We would never vote for a pro-choice Democrat. We would never vote for an anti-gun Democrat, and we would never give them money. We are true conservatives. We believe in business sense, common sense, and service. Those are the core values that we're going to take to Columbia to represent all of you. Number 2, we have to look at a person's core competencies. We can no longer continue to send people who have never been successful in the private sector, who have never created any jobs, who never know how to manage a business, and expect the state government to improve. Because if we continue to send career politicians and government insiders to Columbia, we're going to continue to see the same product that we continue to see over and over and over. And finally, we have got to have someone to lead our state that has the courage to fight for the taxpayer, only represent the taxpayer, and take on the special interests, the career politicians, the government insiders, and the special interests. That's the reason I'm running. That's the reason Pat McKinney chose to be on the ticket, and we're going there to fight for you. It's going to be an 8-year deployment. We're going to fight a political insurgency down there. There's no violence, but the people that are down there that are controlling the area, they're fighting against everyone in this room, and they need to be taught a lesson, and a Marine is about to teach them a lesson. So I ask for your support. I tell all my supporters, get out early, vote often. If you're not a supporter, the lines are better June 13th. Just remember. So thanks for having me here. Time for questions? Or
Yeah, we've got about 7 minutes for
Okay.
questions.
Yes, sir.
Ben Ignatowicz. So, talk about core values, Mr. Warren. You say you're 100% pro-life, but support exceptions for the mother's life. You have also signed the Personhood Amendment that explicitly states no exceptions. So are you lying to the personhood organization or your voters?
So I always appreciate the plants like this guy is. I'm 100% pro-life. The exception is in the life of the mother. I don't view that as a true exception because ultimately you're choosing one life or the other. So we do that all the time. If it's a lot of situations where you're going to choose a life, if someone's going to die, I think they should have a right to choose. So there are no exceptions. The only person in this race that's changed their position during the course of the campaign is Catherine Templeton. She has changed. She originally was against rape and incest exceptions, or she was in favor of those and in the life of the mother, but during the campaign she's flip-flopped. So I assure you that I'm 100% pro-life. I don't lie about that. I haven't changed my position at all. Yes, sir.
I got a mailer today from you, and it said that Catherine Templeton supported Vincent Sheehan against Nikki Haley in 2010.
Correct.
A lot of people in this room worked their tail off to get Nikki Haley elected. So you're standing by that comment?
The comment, the whole, do you have a follow-up?
No, that's it.
So, as the campaign progresses, people are starting to throw attacks. I'm trying to show contrast, and I think there's a difference. Nothing that I have ever said about a candidate is inaccurate. So I think when someone claims to be a conservative, you need to know if they're a conservative. And I will tell you that with Catherine Templeton, she has openly admitted to voting for Vincent Sheehan over Nikki Haley. She has also given $250 to a statewide Democrat over another Republican candidate. She also failed. When we were battling, when conservatives were battling Obama, and we were trying to pick our nominee, Catherine Templeton didn't even bother to show up to vote in the Republican presidential primaries in 2008 and in 2012. And that's not me attacking her, that's just me exposing her record. And that's fair. And I'm going to draw a contrast between my conservative lifestyle and her voting lifestyle. So, yes, sir.
Do you have other pieces coming with you against McMaster and you against?
I will for the runoff.
But you just chose her for the primary?
I will for the runoff, sir.
But you just chose her for the primary?
I have been exposing McMaster. You can go to hypocritehenry.com to see.
I haven't seen any mailings from her, other than Catherine.
Sir, Catherine Templeton right now is running negative ads against me on the radio that are outright lies, questioning to trust me, saying that I'm taking money from foreign governments. I'm a guy that led over 300 combat missions who was willing to fight and die for his country. I assure you that I'm not going to be taking money from foreign governments. Yes?
So here in your county, we have a great education system, and I know in Greenville it's pretty good too, and in Charleston, but the rest of the state isn't up to date really. So how would you want to fix that?
So I'm a huge proponent of bringing more accountability to our education system, and it starts with, we got to have the superintendent be appointed by the governor. Part of the problem we have is no one's really accountable for our education system. We've got to mandate that more money gets to the actual classroom. Right now, when less than half of the money is actually going to the classroom, we've got to make sure at least 70% gets to the classroom. Then we can pay our teachers more. We can have smaller class sizes. We can have better class offerings. I'm a huge proponent of public charter schools. And then we've got to bring in more school choice.
One of the things that concerns me with the schools, I've been in business for a number of years and run a number of businesses. Now I'm pursuing an opportunity to teach school, which is something I want to do for a number of years. That process is interesting at best, and that needs to be changed.
Yeah, I think we need to get more innovative. I'm a business guy, I'm an entrepreneur. Ultimately, what business people do is they see a problem and they come up with a simple solution to fix it, and they build a company around it. And we've got to come up with some simple solutions to complex problems, and one of them is our education system. And I think, me personally, I have an MBA from NYU. I'm fairly good at math. I'm not qualified, according to the South Carolina regulations, to teach a basic math class because I don't have a teaching degree. So I think we've got to be able to look at, hey, if you're an attorney and you're a prosecutor, I think you're capable, and you've been to law school, I think you're capable of teaching civics. And we've got to think outside the box to get the highest caliber people in there. If we have a teacher shortage, let's open it up to other qualified individuals. Yes,
Well, you were talking about paying teachers more, but what about the pension crisis going on right now?
the what?
Pension crisis.
Yeah, so one of the things that is not being mentioned a lot, and it is a very serious crisis, is the public pension. There are estimates anywhere from a deficit of $5 billion all the way up to $40 billion. One of the biggest differences between state governments and federal governments is when the federal government runs up this huge debt, what do? They just print more money. We don't have that luxury. So we gotta fix the pension problem. I would be in favor of going to a 401k system. No one expects in today's generation to work 20 years, live till 80, and then retire at 44 and get a lifetime full salary pension. We can't support that anymore. So we gotta go to a 401k system. We've gotta try to honor our obligations to the people that have paid into the system as much as possible. But moving forward, we've got to go to a 401k system.
Why do you like charter schools?
The example I give is because I really believe that charter schools, they look at different neighborhoods and they really come up with a unique, innovative approach to solving the problems of that neighborhood. And I think neighborhoods differ. And the example I give, there is a neighborhood in Greenville that was literally a top 10 most crime-ridden area in the United States. Then, and to give you an example of how bad the schooling was, only 13% of the kids that entered 9th grade went on to a 2 or a 4-year university. 13%. We had a family friend that started a public charter school, and it's called Legacy Charter. And the premise that he came up with was he started with the fact that he believes that those kids that attend that school will not get anything when they leave the school. Nothing. So what did he do? He extended the school day. So they show up at 7:30, they leave at 4:30. He feeds them 3 times a day to make sure they're eating and eating healthily. He gives them school uniforms to help with discipline. He recognizes that child obesity is a huge problem and has PE every day. He teaches basic, no Common Core, basic math, science, and reading, and tries to prepare the kids to get into school and be successful in life. The first graduating class at that school, 100% of the kids were accepted to 2- and 4-year universities. Not only has it changed the kid's life, it's changed the entire neighborhood. Crime is down significantly. Businesses are moving back into the area, and it's given hope to a community that didn't have any hope. And I think different neighborhoods need different things, and part of the problem with the public schools is it's a one solution for everything and no outside the box thinking, and I think public charter schools does a great job of solving that.
Thank you, Mr. Warren.
Thank you, appreciate it.